Hello, folks. Today we're going to be taking a look at JavaScript objects. They are a fundamental building block of JavaScript, and they appear all the time in Phaser. Essentially, everything you're going to be doing to create your objects in Phaser are going to be objects. So what are objects? Objects are simply a way of organizing data. It's a standalone entity, much like a variable that has some additional properties to it. It has properties and type, and it's probably best to think of these things like you would in real life. If you had a cup or a dog, there are certain things you would do to define that object, right? A cup has a shape, it has a color, it has a size. Same thing with a dog. A dog has a color, a height, a weight, a certain position in space. We can think of it as XYZ coordinates, or it could be longitude, latitude, if you're using GPS. So there's a lot of different properties about a dog and a cup, right? Things that we can physically we can describe about them. But a dog can do something a cat or a cup cannot. Dog can do many things cats cannot, but specifically a cup. Dogs can do many things a cup cannot. And that means they have actions. Well, JavaScript objects can have actions as well, too. And so we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to try to code those things. We'll start with probably try to code a person, because we could maybe think about all the actions, but you could easily transfer this idea to dogs or cups or anything else you want as well. So let's take a look. For a JavaScript object, it's going to be pretty easy. Basically, what we do is we set up a variable like const, and we do, let's say, student equals, and then we have a pair of brackets here. Okay, and inside there, what we would do is we would then define all of the different properties that a student has. So we might have name, and we do is we write out the name, we put a colon, and then we put a single string quote. We'll just put MJ, and then a comma. So student is a name we declare using the const keyword, and then our object is defined by the curly braces that are there. Name is a variable. It does not need a let or a const in front of it or a var. It's just it's a variable that the JavaScript knows being created, and it is limited to just the student object. So nothing outside can use a name. Like if you put let name here, it's not going to conflict with this name because this name is only specific to student. Okay. Oh, you know why? I did this wrong. There we go. Okay. So we've const student, name, and JavaScript. Name is MJ. So we can define other things. We could do age. And I'm going to make myself drastically younger. We're going to do 24. I'm just starting out. Okay. So we get name and age and height. Considering we're making up things, I'm just going to make myself 6 feet. Actually, I'll do double quotes there. There we go. Give myself an inch. 6 feet. And, oop, forgot my comma. All right, and what else? I have... Wait, this seems less like a student bio and like more like a... You know, my physical. Wait, we'll be generous here. We'll say 175. That's nowhere near to be true, but we'll pretend. Okay, so we got name, age, height, and weight, and yeah. So we have all this stuff about this student. All right. Okay, so that's not really all that interesting. Okay, but then okay, so we have all these properties, and then how do we get access to them? So what we can do is, all we have to do is we can do a console log. We say the object we want to know about, student. We put a period, and then we just name off the property that we want to know what the value is. Name. Okay. These what are called key value pairs. Okay. Right up here. Key value pairs. This is the key. This is the value on this side. Okay. There's certain things we can do to find out, say, all the keys, but you can't access the value, these values, without the key. You have to set these values using the key. So the key is everything. You can think of this as like a, I don't know, paper dictionary or just any book whatsoever that has an index or a lookup in the back, right? If you want to know what page in a book something appeared on, you could go to something like the table of contents or the index in the back, and you look up the word and it'll tell you what page, right? The inefficient way of doing that would be a list of pages, which is a regular book, and then you have to scan through each one. Does page 24 contain the word student? Yes or no? I mean, you'd have to go through every single page. Going back to the index, you can just look up, okay, student, and what pages does that word appear on? This is kind of like this, right? So we look up the name, and it tells us what's there. If we look up age, and it'll tell us 24. But let's console log this thing, and we see that it prints off MJ. If we did another console.log student.age, it would tell us the two things about that person, or that student. It would tell us MJ and then 24. Okay, so this is how we get access to it. This is how we would find out what information is contained within. So what type of objects or what other things can they have inside of them? So we've seen that we have name, age, height, weight. Let's change weight to be a number. Let's take off the quotes on that. Let's just do weight 175. And let's do console.log student weight. And we see it prints off 175. No console log errors. We could store numbers. What about hobbies? Can we do arrays? Well, yes, we can. Coding. And video games. That pretty much covers it. Console.log student.hobbies. And we say that it will print off the array of those objects. Now, what happens if we want to know student.hobbies? Well, if we want to know just one item off of that, maybe we want to know what's in the first position, we could put a 0 there. We could find off, it just prints off coding. So we can access lists or access arrays inside of hobbies. Okay. And we could do the same thing with other objects. Meaning we can have something inside of there. We could have something like education history. Education, and we would define it using the curly braces. Okay. And we might something like quotes, secondary, and might put all Rochester. Okay, comma. Then we might do college, Harvard. Okay. And then down here, let's go through and do another console.log student. Actually, it's pretty neat. I'll point this out to you. With this editor, REPL, and a number of other editors, what we're getting is code complete. So as soon as we type student dot, it's giving us all of the possible properties that we have access to. These are like previous ones that, or other things we could probably try to access, but here we see property age string. Okay, and actually if we click on the little thing to make it bigger here, we see age string and close that down, there you go. And we know there's some value to it. So actually let's just do, and we can do our cursor down to select the options here. So in this case, we want education. All right, and we click run. And what did I miss here? Let's see. Oh, there was a typo there. There we go. Hopefully you caught that. All right, there we go. So we print off the education history and we get this. Okay. Now, here's another cool thing. What happens if we want to access inside education? So we're inside student, we want to go inside education, and we want to know what their secondary education is. We hit dot, it's going to tell us what's inside of that we can access. I want to know secondary. So I want to know where this person went to school. You can see that it's going to print out Old Rochester. Okay. So we can access objects inside of objects by using dot notation. And actually, if we hover over student, it'll actually tell us the information that's contained inside that student object. So this is actually, besides functions, there's two fundamental ways of writing programs. And JavaScript gives you a choice depending on how you want to write it. So here we see const student as an object and it being defined below. You could do this with inside a function as well too. And but for right now, let's just talk about this way is probably the most common way. Const student, curly braces, properties within. So that's another question though. Can we add some functions? But we'll come back to that in a couple of minutes. Okay, so we'll say this one, accessing properties. Can we assign it to variable? So yes, we can. And in fact, it's as easy as doing another like let high school equal or get student dot education dot secondary. Okay, and if we console log high school, it should print off the exact same. Should give us another Old Rochester. There it is. So what we just did is took the property that was inside of a student there, and we've assigned it to a variable outside. That way we can work with it. Yeah, it doesn't really make sense to do it in like a main program because why would you? You just do student education dot secondary. But maybe you have to do that a bunch of times. You don't have to keep on trying to access that property. So you just assign it to a variable and it makes your life a little bit easier. The other reason why you would want to do this is if you're doing like a loop where you want to go over the information or every property in or do something to that property, we would do it like that, where we'd assign it to a variable. Okay. The other way you may see objects accessed would be bracket notation. And so there's two ways of doing it. So in this case, we'll do console.log student, and you'll see brackets, and we put in quotes, and we put in what the thing we're trying to access. So age. So console log student, and then brackets, and then we pass in the key, and we want its value back. So we had 24. So either one you can use, and it's technically valid JavaScript code. It would just be a matter of which one you feel more comfortable with. I use both, but you'll see both in examples of phaser code. I would say you're going to see student.hobbies and student.age. This one more often than this one, just because it's just easier to type, I think, for a lot of people. You just do student dot and access that property. Here, you got to do the brackets. You got to know if this key is here. Notice when I type this out, when I do that, it doesn't give us an autocomplete. So it doesn't say, hey, there's an age property is that we want to access. We have to know that it's in there, or have the computer print out all the keys so that we can know what's available. Or we just do a check if, an if-else statement, if student age, or if age is in student, do something with it. Okay, so accessing objects with brackets, and accessing properties, I'll just change this to properties with brackets, access properties with dot notation. So just clarifying some of that. Okay. What else can we do? So we can assign a new value, which we will do a bunch. And I'll use the dot notation. We can do, let's see, we'll just do age. We can do student.age gets, and we can set a new value to that. We'll age them 1 year. And then let's console.log student.age. Okay, so we see that we overrode the, or overwritten the age property here. Changed it, actually we changed it twice. We changed it from a string 24 to a number 25. So these are what we would call mutable objects, meaning we can mutate them and we can change all these things. Okay, technically a object is a reference type rather than like a primitive type, so it's more advanced than just like a variable or an array. So there's actually an array is a reference type too, basically variables, and which is getting really into programming, but basically we can change these values here. Okay, and there's multiple ways to change those values. Okay, assigning a new value. Okay, what about creating new values or creating new properties? Property. Okay, creating new properties. So student, maybe they have a job, and maybe they are cashier or something at a retail. Okay, student job equals cashier. Job was not part of our original list of properties, but we can add it with that, and we can check to see if it's there. If we do another console.log student.job, should tell us cashier. Okay, very good. Okay, so that works. What about deleting a property? Okay, for that one, what we can do is we can just do the keyword delete, and we can type student.job, and before this was cashier. Now we can do console.log student.job, and let's see if it is still there. Okay, we get it undefined, meaning that it does not know what that object is, which means that it was deleted. Cool. Moving on down the list. What happens if we don't know the keys, right? So what happens if we want to delete something, but we don't know if it's actually there? So there's actually a couple different ways we can do this. The easiest way to do it is to actually go through and access all the keys of it entirely, have a console log those. So let's say get all keys. And so then what we can do is, all we have to do is console.log. We say the object, and we say we want to get the keys. This tells us all of the keys. Notice that we have two undefined numbers here, undefined values here. And that's because while, actually one of those might be from testing. Why is that two? In any case, one of them is because we had a cashier and we deleted it. And so the actual key is gone, but the space in memory is still there. And so if we printed off the number of keys, it doesn't get rid of it. It just removes that reference to memory, but the object size is still growing. Okay, it's still there. It's still part of the memory of the object, saying that there was something there, but no longer. And that undefined there will eventually be released. But what it's talking about is, oh, that's why there's two. Yeah. So these console log statements of student job. So we have them and they're undefined. If we hide these things, that should undefined student.age. What other undefined error are we getting here? You know what? Actually, I'm thinking about it. That is actually not entirely what I want here. Undefined, right. That's why it's undefined. It's the wrong method. Oh, man. All right. Sorry about that. The one we want, object.keys. And then we pass in the object we want the keys from. That's why it was undefined. There we go. All right, cool. So now, now we get the, sorry about that. We get an array of all the properties of the object. So this is one way to get it. Using object keys. Okay, the other way to do it is to go through, and actually before I do this, I'm gonna hide the console log statements we've done so far. So I'm gonna go through and just comment them out. Comment out this block here. There we go. I want to make sure nothing is, all right, good. Okay, so we can get object keys that way. The other way to do it is to run what's called a for in loop. Okay, and the for in loop is going to loop over every property inside of it and do something to it. Get all keys using for in loop. And how we write this is for, we would say like const property. It's just a variable. We can name anything we want. And student, we put curly braces at the end. And then we say what we want to have happen, console.log. We just do property. Okay. And we see a slightly different version of what we tried doing before, which was the object keys. And that got us an array, a list of them. This just goes through, and for each property, it will console log it. It'll print it out there. So a for in loop is really, really handy if you're trying to go through and maybe, if you're storing like a to-do list object, right? And all your list of to-dos. And let's see, like a const to do. And we just enumerate them as like one, A, to, B. All right, you went through and just did something like this. And you wanted to take each item off the property and set them to the screen, set them to, we could do something like that with a for loop, okay? Okay. The last thing that we need to understand about objects is that they can contain functions. So we mentioned that they can contain lists and numbers and arrays and objects and all this strings. They also can contain functions. And the function is going to make this more accessible, all right? And so the one last thing, we'll get to the functions, I guess, in 1 second, is that, but after we cover this, when we write our functions, it's going to make the object do something, right? And actually, you know what? It's fine. We'll cover functions now. I was going to cover them after the word keyword this, but I think it makes more sense to just do functions now. Okay, so with functions, we can think of a student has properties, their height, their weight, their hobbies, but they can also control, or they also could have actions that they take. So properties and actions. What actions does a student do? One might be, we can think of like the actual, like all human behavior, and walking might be one. So we can define it as function walking. And in that case, we might say, we'll just do a console.log. I am walking. Okay. So we might see it, a function defined like that. All right. This is how we defined our functions previously. But actually, if we go to run this, missing after property list. After the Harvard, the curly brace there, we got to put a comma. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, all right. So what is happening? So it doesn't, it actually doesn't like this way of writing it. So our function walking is not how we would define this inside an object as a property. And it's clearly yelling at us like this. So what else do we have to do? For this one, we'll have to write our function slightly differently. And if a function is inside of a property, inside of an object, we don't actually need the function word. We can just write walking, parentheses, and then the curly braces to explain what it's doing. Okay, if we run it here, oh, you know what we gotta do? We gotta go down here and actually console log it. So I'm gonna comment out these this for loop and this console log loop. And that's just console.log. Okay, to get access to that function inside, we would do the same thing, student.walking. It's a function, so we need to include parentheses there. Okay, and we see this as I am walking. All right. So this is doing what we wanted to do, which is go through and console log I am walking out here. Okay, and this will be good. So we might see it like this, or another way you might see this written is, I'll do it actually above here. So education. I'm going to click this auto format to clean this up a little bit. There we go. Okay, so we can actually do one more property here, and we might do walking function console.log I am walking. So we see it, we set almost like a property like we would anything else, and except now we would just simply add the method name or add the name of the function previous to writing function. So both of these are correct and both of these will work. It's just a matter of which one you want to use. And we saw the other one work. If I comment that out, let's go down the bottom here. We see student walking. Let's say I am walking. So both of them working. Remember, we commented out the one above here, right? Walking function console log I am walking. So this one is accessing the new one we just wrote, which is here. Okay. And it is working just fine. So both of these are an option. I would say in terms of defining, we're going to see both inside of Phaser. Okay. All right. Now let's move on to the last part, which is going to be the this keyword, which it also is going to be, that's weird, which is also going to be pretty common inside of working with JavaScript objects in Phaser. All right, so I'm going to hide that. Create object using functions. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go through and comment out everything except for the actual object itself. I don't want, there we go. Okay, I want clear console for when we work. Okay, create objects using functions. So we created one student, but what happens if we want to make multiple students? Right? What happens if we want to make, you know, if you have a bunch of students in a class, you don't want to have to create student 1, student 2, student 3, and they have to fill out all these fields for every student, or copy and paste and then have to go and fill in each field. There's faster ways of doing that. And what we're going to use is what's called a constructor function to do this. What we do is we define an object type using the word function, just like we did our other mini repeatable code blocks. And then we have to define our function using capital letters. So this one, I'm just going to call this person. And notice that it's highlighted like a green there versus up here it was student, right? So this is going to be slightly different, and it's capitalized. This is you basically, anytime you're going to do this, you're going to want to capitalize your person names. And then what we're going to do is set up and put some parentheses at the end there, and we're going to set up a number of different parameters that we're going to make. So different properties we're going to have inside this car. So, or person. So we might do age. We might do job, and let's see, weight, something like that. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we use this keyword. This, let's see what I got here. Age, okay, equals age. This, oh, that's my other one. Job equals job. This weight equals weight. So what it's referring to is a function person. It's going to create an object. Okay, it's going to create an object up here, but we make it a function. We make it a repeatable block of code that's going to automatically create objects for us. This object right, that we're going to create is going to have an age property. It's going to have a job property, and it's going to have a weight property. Those are going to be set by the parameters that we pass in, right? This age is going to go to this age, right? If I can maybe do X, so it's not as confusing, Y, Z. Okay. So you're not seeing job, this job, like what are we talking about here? So function person, X, Y, and Z. This is going to get the X parameter once we pass it in. This is going to get the Y parameter, and this is going to get the Z parameter once it goes in. And then it's going to define those. Just to have it make sense, I'm going to replace those back, but I wanted you to show you that this age is not referring to this age. Okay, this age gets passed in, it gets put here, and then this gets assigned once this person is created. Okay. So the next what we can do is we can set up a const, and we can set up a person's name. John. Const John is equal to a new person. And we capitalize it. Okay, and we see here it's telling us that it's a function person, age, job, right? Okay, and then we can pass in the other information we're going to give. So the first one's going to be age. Say this person's 30. Their job is a teacher. And the third thing we're going to tell it is this person's weight, and we'll have it be 200. Okay. So then we hit enter, and what happened? What we just did is we created a new person named John. Forgot to add a name here, which would be helpful, I guess. But we have an age, a job, and a weight. That's the only thing we need to know about this person. Okay. And then what we can do is actually take a look at what we just created. And we can do so by console.logging John. What is John? John is now an object. This object has a property of age, a property of job, and a property of weight, and the values we passed into it. Okay, you're going to see this type of format of creating objects. You'll see both types of creating objects, but we're going to use this, the keyword this, and literally this format a lot inside of Phaser. It is all over the place. And all this keyword is referring to is the object that it is a part of. Okay. And we can use this up here. We can use this, right? We're just defining it down here, referring to it in the constructor function that we're writing. Okay. And we can do things like set the properties of John. I'll move the console log down a couple, but we can do the same thing. We forgot to add name. John.name equals John. And let's console log it. And we see that there's now a name property called John. Okay. So we can add things just like we did previously with our examples above. It's an object. All this is going to do is create an object for us. But what we're going to do as we go through is we're going to use this keyword to create new objects, create new images and sprites, and give them properties, right? If we're going to take a 2D image of a bird or a ball or a block, we are now going to take that PNG, that JPEG image, and put it inside of the game engine, inside of JavaScript. We now need to tell JavaScript things about that object. The PNG image doesn't come in with properties like X, Y, and Z. It doesn't have properties of like fly left, fly right, controls for the keyboard, right, to control an object. We have to define all of that ourselves. And in every game engine, we have to define it ourselves. That's not something that's new to JavaScript or Phaser or anything else. It's just something we have to do no matter what. But the point here is that we're going to use constructor functions to identify. We can do something like this dot picture. And we can set this picture to a file location, right? That we're going to see this next time is where we load up an image, and it's going to be set to, we set this dot picture, and actually it would be, sorry, it would be there, it would be picture, and we'd have to add another parameter here of picture. Okay. And then what we do here is we pass in a file location. Okay, so where exactly in our files is the picture located for this person, John? But we can set every time we create a new person, we could do const Mary equals new person. This person's going to be 16. This person's going to be unemployed. This person's going to weigh, I don't know, 110 pounds. I have no idea if that's how much a 16-year-old should weigh. I'm guessing here. And picture, we'd have to set another file location for that picture. But now what we've done is we can what's called instantiate. We can create new instances of the same object that have the same properties. You want 1,000 enemies in your game? That's fine. Create a function enemy, give it the properties you want, and you can create it over and over and over again. You don't have to create a new enemy for every time one appears. You want to create a new item that you want to pick up. Great. Function weapon. You could set the different parameters that you would get for that weapon. If it's a gun, then it might have accuracy. It might have fire rate. It might have damage. Those are all properties you could set for that weapon. And every time you want to create a new weapon, you just do identify the weapon, const weapon name equals new weapon. You set in the parameters for it, and all of a sudden you have this, and it would work. Okay. The last thing we would have is can we assign functions? And yes, we can. We can give a function to this person that now both new creations will inherit. Excuse me. And what's cool about it is that we only have to do it once to the master function up here, the function person, and everything else will inherit that as well too. It automatically gets created as part of it as soon as it's written up there in the function person. So we can try that out in 1 second. All right, let's have this person do something. Let's have this person, let's say this, greeting, this greeting equals function. It's going to be a function, and we'll have it say, we'll do like the little cheesy thing where the alert pops up. Alert, and hello. And actually what we can do is, we add one more parameter up here. Let's add name. Hello. And we'll add in this dot name equals name. Okay, and down here we're going to have to pass it in as the second parameter. So say John. So this one will say Mary. Okay, hello. And then we could do I am this dot name. Okay. So now we can get rid of John.name down here. We don't need that anymore. And so now what we can do is actually go down here and we can do John dot greeting. I'm going to make John greet us. John, oh, forgot my parentheses. There we go. All right, we get a little cheesy, spammy looking pop-up here. Hello, I am John. Wow, the spacing on that is awful. So we can make that fix real quick. Just go to the end of I am, add a space, run again. Hello, I am John. Okay. So this looks wicked sketchy, but it solves the issue, right, of adding functions. So we can add this dot greeting, and we can have a bunch of different functions that object's going to have. Okay. So you're going to want to get used to seeing this style, get comfortable with it, because like I said, we're going to be seeing a lot of this. Basically, Phaser is built on JavaScript objects. And so it's just something we're going to have to use. You're going to have to get used to using. And it's something we're going to see pretty regularly as we move forward. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. And I look forward to when we actually get to start building a game in the next one.